So it's a beautiful winter's day here. I wanted to take a minute to talk to you guys about something that comes up a lot when I get into some of my one-on-one coaching sessions with clients. A lot of times they first start off, they want to unlock, this move or that move. I need to learn to sneak, or I need to learn the cheetah's tail or whatever. And that's great, but rope flow is about a lot more than just unlocking moves. And so what happens a lot of times is there's this element of style that maybe in a certain aesthetic they're looking for, a certain level of fluidity, right, that they are not always seeing once they've unlocked these moves. And so we'll talk a little bit about these 5 things most of the time. So everyone is a little different. Some people need to do all of them, some people need to do one of them, or sometimes there's something else that they need to work on to get the fluidity that they're after. But these are the most common ones, in no particular order. I guess maybe it is in some sort of order, because the first one is your balance, your foot base, right? So in rope flow, as I said, it's not just about unlocking these moves, it's about really using the rope to help you improve your body, coordination, balance, timing, rhythm, all the things that are part of moving in the day-to-day life, whether you're going upstairs, moving groceries from here to there, or whatever. It's best to be done in the most efficient physical way possible. So with rope flow, it's hard to look smooth and coordinated and fluid when you don't have a solid balance, a solid base of your foot, right? Positioning, not only in terms of just the footwork, all right? I'm not talking necessarily about the movement from back and forth or locomotion here. I'm talking more about just the general basis for your balance, right? So whether you're in a square stance, all right, with your feet together, not touching the instep of your feet together, but the toes are at the same plane, right? Or in a split stance where one or the other foot is set back a little bit. Either way, you want to have a good, maybe hip width apart base for your feet, because the closer they are together, the less of a balance point you have, right? So that's important, because it's really hard to look smooth and flow if you're always falling off balance. So whether you're standing still or whether you're moving about with your flow, you want to make sure you think about, almost consider yourself trying to come from the ground up with your movement, right? So for example, I can do this movement here, this figure 8, and I can just use my arm and my wrist, right? More or less, a little bit of torso twist, or I can get my feet involved, a little bit of as I shift my weight, right? It's coming back and forth. It's starting with my feet and it's going up, past my hips, up my spine, and it's giving the rope energy from the ground up. So think about that when you're flowing. If you want to work on your fluidity and smoothness, try to think about first, where are your feet and how is the energy coming from the rope, right? Is your hips and your spine getting involved? That's a big key. And once you start working on that, once you start becoming conscious of that, you'll see that your fluidity will probably improve. But not only that, you'll find yourself probably moving more confidently in general, right? So footwork is kind of number one. Number 2, which is fairly common, especially when people start out, is that we don't often have the kind of wrist mobility that we ought to. Our wrists kind of get a little stiff, too much typing, too much being in the same place. And so you see people start flowing and they're kind of forearm, and they're from elbow to knuckles. There's not much going on there. And so you really want to get into where you're articulating that wrist, because that's what really gives that's the last thing that gives the rope its kind of tension and its motion, is that wrist articulation, okay? So it's very important to kind of get that down, whether or not, whatever move you're doing. As you get through your rope flow progression, learning all these moves, you'll see that wrist articulation is going to become an important part in pretty much every move, especially when you want to make sure you keep the proper tension on the rope and the proper rope shape. I won't say proper, but the rope tension and the rope shape is kind of what gives you the feedback to let you know that you're kind of in the zone and hitting the right timing with your coordination and movement. Quick side note, for those of you who are into your rope flow practice and enjoy it as much as I do, but also find it to be something of a solo activity, okay? It's okay to be a lone wolf, but sometimes you want to have a little community, a little fun, a little engagement, other people who know and understand what you're going through in terms of trying to master your craft with the rope flow and advance your art form. You can get pointers and tips from others, or you can give help to others who are learning some things you've already learned. Come check us out in the Rope Flow Collective. The link is in the description, and make sure you share this with your friends and family and people on social media, whoever else is into rope flow or maybe should be into rope flow. So we'll see you there, back to regular scheduled program. These next 2 are things that are important, but they definitely require the same thing to resolve them, which is drilling, right? So the first one is confidence, because there's certain body language, okay, in terms of style or just in terms of movement that comes with confidence. And when you're starting out, it's hard to be confident with the rope because you're always thinking you're going to hit yourself in the face. So you're doing a lot of ducking and you're doing a lot of stuff. But as you get more comfortable, you know where the rope's going to go. So for example, when I'm working on teaching people sneaks, for underhand or overhand, whatever kind of sneak, a lot of times you see them start out with they're doing like this, and they're sneaking like that because they're not confident that the rope's not going to smack them in the face, right? And you see them ducking, or their lead hand, the front hand goes up way high. And as you get more comfortable, right, you know where the rope's going to go, and so you can just sneak it like this without having to do much ducking or really any ducking, right? So that confidence, right, and that comfortability with this rope whizzing about your face only comes from practice, repetition. So I recommend getting some drills, whatever move it is you're working on that you want to be more comfortable with, or even if it's just a flow, because it's a sequence of moves. You drill those movements, right? So let's say you're working on your matador, right? I would say spend a minute every practice. The first thing you do is just spend a minute working on your matador and being conscious of all the things I mentioned so far. Your balance, your wrist articulation, right? That tension on the rope, and the rope shape, right? You don't want it to be twisting up too much. You don't want to be losing this tension like that. So you want to focus on guiding that rope, using your wrists and your hands and shifting that weight, having that balance, right? Then if you're going to, let's say, working on a pattern, right? You can do matadors, the dragon roll, all the way. You still want to focus on that same thing, your wrists, your balance, right? And those two things will give you more confidence when your body language gets involved, because you already know where the rope's going to go. You've done it hundreds and thousands of times, and then that confidence will naturally come out because those repetitions have been put in the bank. There's no shortcut to repetitions for this kind of a thing. All right, and the fourth thing that comes up a lot is just coordination and timing, right? Because a lot of this has to do with your hand-eye coordination, right? And then there's timing. That not only does your wrist articulation go into whether this rope is moving and having the good shape and the comfortable, good feeling to the rhythm, but there's timing and coordination, right? Because if you don't move your hands at the right time, if they're not sequenced, the rope won't maintain its shape. So that also can only be achieved through once you learn the movement at all, once you can get the rope to go at all where you want it to go, then it's these drills you've got to do. You got to get in there. Here's a move I just started playing with. It's just a variation on the matador, right? But it's a high matador variation. I like the way it feels, so I've been playing with it lately. But when I first started, it was only on one side working, and I had to kind of practice and drill it. I mean, when I first started, this was like a day or two ago. So I'm still learning it. So if it doesn't look so great there, you got to give me a pass. But I'm just trying to show you what happens in a process of learning and going through the rope flow. You're going to have movements that are new to you, or that you're trying to flesh out and figure out, and they're not going to feel natural at first, and you probably won't look like you have a lot of confidence. That body language comes only from repetition. There's nothing I can tell you. There's no coach on the planet who can shortcut that for you. Last thing is, it's good to record yourself. Right? I know how much of a pain it is for some folks. It's like pulling teeth, but for me, it was no different. I didn't want to record myself. I even have a slight bit of disdain for people who go to the gym and work out and all they do is record themselves and taking pictures all day. I'm an old guy, so that's just not my thing. So this kind of felt like that when I first started recording myself. But what really happens is you'll often feel like a move feels great. You feel like you're doing it and it's great, but it's not until you get home and have recorded yourself on that movement that you'll know, oh, well, I need to work on that. This left hand is, or whatever your non-dominant hand is, not doing what it's supposed to do, or maybe your body's not moving on that one side, or whatever it may be. The recording tells you that. It's important. You're going to have to take the time, at least maybe once a week, or I would say whenever you learn a new move and you think you've gotten it kind of down pat, that's a good time to record yourself doing that move and see whether or not you're delusional. There's a TV show I like called Frasier, and they have one episode, the guy calls into the radio and he says, "Hey, Doc, I need some help because I work the late shift in security, and there's cameras everywhere here, and sometimes I look at my monitors and the camera me is doing things that I don't approve of." So I thought that was pretty funny. That dude's crazy. But anyway, this is what it boils down to when you record yourself with this rope, because you might say that stylistically you're doing something that you don't want to be doing. So that's the only way you can identify it, and then you can work on that with your drilling. Like, okay, if I know my left hand is not doing it the way I want it to, then I can drill that one side over and over again until I get my hand and my body to move how it's supposed to move for that particular movement. And so the camera, the video camera, is an invaluable tool. If you don't have the ability to record yourself on camera, if you don't have a phone or what have you, find a mirror. Maybe if you do this in the gym, you know, the mirror is the second best, but the camera is even better. So record yourself from both sides, record yourself moving in a given movement with each hand. See how you look. Not only see how you look, but see what in particular you want to change. You might need to work on your footwork. You might need to work on any of the things we've talked about here so far in this video, but you won't really know it for sure unless you record yourself. So trust me on that. Give yourself a chance to improve much more rapidly. This is the fastest thing that you can do, in addition to having drills and being consistent with your rope flow. This is the fastest way to improve it. I know for me and a lot of my students, even though they didn't want to record themselves, once they did, they agreed with me. It helps you immensely. So with all that said, hopefully this will help you if you're looking to kind of get a more smooth flow, get a little bit more fluid, and you know, have a better kind of relationship with your rope and its patterns and its movements.